The wife lost everything: children, house, money, because of lies and cheated. Her parents have abandoned her, and her friends are not in touch. A little rabbit was discovered by my children a few days ago, and they took it back to our house. They were pleading with us to keep it, but we are unable to do so since we already have a number of pets, including a wild rabbit. I attempted to explain to my children in a kind manner that the rabbit needed to be returned to its family since it had reached an age where it could care for itself. Despite their sadness, they consented to take it back. Nevertheless, I was unable to accompany them since I was preoccupied with my profession, so my wife Sarah took on the burden of going with them. I instructed Sarah to take the rabbit to a clump of dense shrubs at the terminus of our property and release it there since I believed that this would be the most secure location for it to be released. Our home is located in a rural location, which is rife with dangerous animals. My children came racing back into the house, weeping loudly, and Sarah was chasing after them, trying to calm them down and assuring them that it wasn't that horrible. I went back to work, but a short time later, my children came running back into the house. Mason, my oldest child, told me that Sarah had released the rabbit in the center of the yard and a hawk had swooped down and taken it. I questioned what had occurred, and Mason told me that Sarah had made them release the bunny. Even more, they detailed the sounds of desperation that the unfortunate rabbit made. After being shocked, I became irritated with Sarah because she did not heed the counsel that I had given her. She excused herself by stating that it was nothing more than a bunny and that the children would eventually get over it. Nevertheless, I informed her that this was completely incorrect. I had previously cautioned her about the dangers of predators, and now our children had to see that unfortunate rabbit being taken away by a hawk. During the course of many days, both of our children retreated to their own rooms and refused to contact their mother. When she attempted to communicate with them, they began referring to her as the bunny slayer. I attempted to mediate the situation despite the fact that my children were still upset, and I was still upset with Sarah for the way things had ended out. Sarah expressed her displeasure with me for not providing her with support, and said that as husband and wife, we had to constantly provide support for one another. The two of us, however, got into a disagreement, during which I pointed out the countless instances in which she had not backed me. In addition, she began to weep, and she went to our bedroom to wallow in her misery. Now that I'm thinking about it, I could have made a mistake, and a buddy of mine advised that I inquire here about whether or not I was in the wrong. Yes, I am aware that hawks have the same need for sustenance as we do, and they may be found all across our region. I just did not want my children, who are 6 and 7 years old, to be exposed to anything of that kind at such a tender age. My childhood was spent in the countryside, whereas Sarah's upbringing was spent in the city. When I was a child, whenever we encountered a circumstance that was similar to this one involving a wild animal that had been captured, we always made an effort to release it in a location where it would have a chance to fight back. Edit 2. I assure you that I did not shout at Sarah. In what specific part of my post does that statement appear? It is true that I reprimanded her, but I did not shout at her, not even when we were having a disagreement later on. In order to avoid the children hearing us, we fought in hushed tones. To add insult to injury, I was unable to accompany them in their mission to free the rabbit since I was unable to leave my workplace. Because I work from home 3 days a week, I am required to be close to the phone at all times in order to answer calls while I am on the clock, with the exception of when I am given a break for lunch. The Bunny Slayer moniker that our children began using following the event with the rabbit was not one that I ever used to refer to Sarah. I have made an effort to get them to quit. A person who would call their wife such a thing would be behaving in a manner that is demeaning and would be considered a bully. Apologies for the large number of adjustments that have been made. However, my children were not playing in the yard without being monitored. Sarah, who is a mother who stays at home with her children, was there when they discovered the bunny. When they came sprinting back to the home with everything, I had to convince them that it was necessary for them to let go of everything. Edit number 4. I can believe I'm going to have to make another edit, but people keep pointing out something that has to be changed. This was not taken from a video that was found on the internet. Although I have not seen such a film, I have no doubt that it is out there. On the other hand, hawks are known to capture small animals on a regular basis. So, is it really that odd that similar event would occur to someone else than the people who took a video of the same type of incident. On the contrary, I do not believe that. From the exception of the home and a single tree, the vast majority of my land is covered in grass and is flat. I am the owner of 5 acres. It was a Saturday when the grass was mowed for the final time, so it was quite short. Due to the fact that hawks are always hunting in the vicinity, the unfortunate rabbit may as well have been carrying a target on its back. I have been dealing with hawks ever since I was a child when I used my old BB rifle to protect newborn chicks from predation. Little rabbits are virtually one of their favorite things to grab, which is why I told Sarah to make sure the bunny was released in the bushes. Edit 5. I couldn't be more sick of hearing people say things like, "Hawks gotta eat too," or "circle of life," or that I am in the wrong for going against the natural order of things. For my grandparents, I was responsible for ensuring that animals were safe from hawks when I was a child. In addition, farmers have the right to defend their livestock from being attacked by predators. There was no way that we were going to just let hawks to come in and grab all of the newborn chicks that they desired, as they would have done on a regular basis. It is true that I was out there with a BB gun, but the hawks were more and more deterred by my presence than anything else. I was never successful in shooting one down. Oh sure, I did manage to hit a few, but only just. In the 30 years that have passed since I last fired a shot at a hawk, all it ever did was cause them to flee and turn their backs on me. It was never a pleasant experience for me to fire at dead bodies. Despite the fact that my grandfather was the one who used actual weapons to hunt down hawks and coyotes, I was intimately aware with the fact that hawks were taking tiny animals while I was growing up. Hawks have little trouble obtaining food all throughout our region nonetheless. They are opportunists, just like the majority of predators, which is why I intended to release the rabbit in the bushes. Nevertheless, as I said in a previous edit, I was unable to leave my desk, which is something that a great number of people still do not seem to get or did not care to read. I'm not sure whether this is the appropriate location to submit this, but I am unable to think of any other area where it may be posted. For the benefit of those who remember me, I am the one whose wife directed our children to release a wild rabbit in the center of the yard, despite my advice that she should take the bunny to the bushes in order to release it in a secure manner. When a hawk snatched the rabbit in front of our children, who were 7 and 6 years old at the time, they freaked out on their mother and then ran back to me in tears. They were both terrified of their mother. The children in our family began to refer to their mother as the Bunny Slayer. Now the moniker sounds suitable, and as the news of her affair became public, other people began calling her by that name as well. The events that transpired with that unfortunate rabbit are a thing of the past in comparison to what I have to tell you right now. Following the conclusion of my divorce a few months ago, I am now able to utter these words as a free man. Please fasten your seatbelts because this is going to be rather lengthy and difficult. The term Rick refers to a fair partner. I'm not making that distinction more easily understood before. After I showed Sarah the initial post I had made on Reddit, she became quite angry with me. In fact, it was so irrational that it led to a heated argument, and after that, I was given the quiet treatment for another week. I attempted to get my children to stop mistreating their mother after the rabbit incident, even though they were punished with modest groundings and timeouts. However, the label Bunny Slayer kept coming back every time our children were upset with their mother. After a couple of weeks, Sarah agreed that she should have listened to me regarding the rabbit and should have brought it to the bushes as I suggested. She also said that she had loosened up on her cold shoulder routine. She said that she just found herself in a position where she needed to defend herself since she did not want to be in mistake. In addition to accepting that apology, I've also apologized to myself for writing the post on Reddit. It was my desire for us to attend marital therapy, but she declined my request. Due to the fact that she pretended that there was nothing wrong with our marriage, I made the decision not to pursue the matter any further, since it seemed that things were getting much better. However, after a few weeks had passed, my oldest child, Mason, approached me and informed me that she had something she wanted to share with me. It wasn't only the rabbit that was making her so angry with her mother, there was another cause as well, but she was too afraid to tell me about it. After reassuring her, I informed her that she may confide in me about anything. Honestly, what she said astonished me and completely altered the course of events in an instant. Sarah had been bringing a guy around on several Saturdays while I was at work, and she had referred to him as her special friend. She said that this had been going on for as long as she could remember. She used a variety of incentive techniques to convince our children to be silent about it nonetheless. Mason eventually came to the realization that there was a significant problem with it and took some time to get up the nerve to tell me about it. It is really easy for children to learn new things and acquire knowledge. The dismissal of the realities is something that I find really annoying. Recently, I had seen that Sarah was behaving in a rather unusual manner. In her interactions with everyone, particularly the children, she had become more abrupt. When I showed her my first post, I attempted to have a conversation with her about it, but she simply went off on me about anything she could think of, including disparaging my beauty, my character, my habits, and even my relatives on my side of the family. The fact that I used to smoke, which I'd stopped doing more than 15 years ago, was also brought up by her. After that, she resorted to shutting me out of our bedroom and wailing so loudly that it could be heard throughout the whole house. So when Mason came to me, I was able to put two and two together and understand what was going on. The mood swings she experienced when she was pregnant with both of our children were quite similar to the conduct she exhibited while she was cheating on us. In the same vein, I say, since it was much more terrible. Sarah was quite cranky due to hormones and projecting because of her adultery, according to what I have learned from Googling online, what others have told me, and even what a counselor has told me. It is not possible for me to assert that I am an expert in psychology nonetheless. It does seem to make sense. Despite the fact that I wanted everything to be a misunderstanding, I promptly placed an order for a few covert cameras and put them up without anybody knowing about it. Just to be sure that no one at home would see them, I had them sent to my place of employment. Finally, I arranged for them to meet on a day when Sarah went out with her pals to enjoy a night out with the girls. The process of hooking them up and connecting them to the Wi-Fi was fairly simple and took just a few short hours to complete. From my home computer, my laptop, and my business computer, I was able to keep an eye on every area of the house. Initially, I was concerned that I may have gone more than I should have. If it turned out that I was mistaken, I considered the possibility that I could remove the cameras and no one would ever find out about it. Nevertheless, my worst concerns were realized, as I was able to gather a substantial amount of evidence in only the first week. One of my wife's previous co-workers is the one whom she went on to hire as an assistant. I was able to recall him pretty clearly since, whenever I saw him at a variety of events, they seemed to be quite near. In order to devote her entire time to becoming a mother, Sarah gave up her work many years ago when she became pregnant with Mason. At the time, it was a choice that we arrived at together as a couple. Despite the fact that they were no longer her closest friends, Sarah maintained her relationships with the people she had worked with in the past. The information that I am going to share with you has pretty much caused everyone to despise her. Initially, Rick is around 7 years younger than Sarah. Sarah is older than Rick. At her previous place of employment, she served as a mentor to him in order to fill the role she had left, and the two of them remained extremely close to one another. I am in my 40s, yet if you were to look at Sarah, you would never guess that we are both in our 40s. Due to the fact that she is very attractive, she is often misidentified as someone who is in their 20s. My hunch is that she got the most out of it. After all was said and done, I decided to tell my sister Julie about what was going on and show her the film that was captured by the nanny cameras. In addition to mentioning that she had seen Sarah at a neighborhood pub getting a little too close with a guy who was not me, she informed me that she had been suspecting something for some time. They did not kiss or engage in any other sexual activity while she was watching, rather. They focused their attention on the shoulders and lower back. Julie did not inform me sooner because she was uncertain about the situation. I decided to look into it more and placed an order for a GPS tracker. I concealed it in the trunk of Sarah's vehicle after I had finished setting it up at that place of employment. Julie and her husband Tom agreed to assist me and watched the tracker on Sarah's next scheduled night out with friends. Sarah was supposed to be going out with her pals. Sarah traveled to a location that was 40 miles away from where she often travels and met up with Rick. This time, she went to a totally other location. The two of them were observing one another from their vehicle, and Julie and Tom saw that Rick was continuously caressing Sarah's tummy as they were conversing. Moreover, they took a video of this event. Due to the fact that she was so irritable at home, I immediately realized that she had to be pregnant with his child when I viewed the film. Due to the fact that I had become a total disaster, Julie and Tom were the ones who had to calm me down. In spite of the fact that I was considering using alcohol as a kind of self-medication, Julie informed me that doing so would be the worst thing I could do at this minute. At a later time, I made the decision to take a leave of absence from work, but I informed Sarah that I would really be traveling on a business trip. Despite the fact that she didn't make much of an effort to conceal her delight at the prospect of my departure for a time, she couldn't have been more thrilled about it. Is this lady who she is? It is hardly possible that she is the same person that I married about 22 years ago. Am I correct? Is it possible that someone who is an identical replica of her has taken her position at some point? Is she a member of the persona of the pod people? Is it true that I have ever known her? As I continued to think about it, I found that it made less and less sense to me. Therefore, I came to the realization that attempting to make sense of anything would not be beneficial to me in the long run. Julie and Tom agreed to take my children for a few days. They like going to see their aunt and uncle in the city. I had cameras installed all around the home, and they were enthusiastic about the opportunity. In this way, Sarah was able to get the precise opening she desired. After I had gone, she phoned Rick, and he arrived that evening to stay the night. This happened just a few hours after I had left. I wanted to go into any specifics on what they did around the home, since you are the ones who are likely to fill in the specifics on your own. On the other hand, in addition to all of that, they repeatedly made jokes about me. They were talking freely about their kid and how they needed to figure out what to do before her tummy begins to show. At that point, she was already more than 5 months advanced in her pregnancy, and there was no way that it could be mistaken for mine. Considering that Rick is of a different race than I am, it would be rather simple to determine that the kid would not be mine from the moment it was born. Rick's worries were dismissed by Sarah, who said that they had months to work out the situation for themselves. Then, without any guilt, she stated that this wasn't even her first affair. She had slept with another guy when she was 31 years old. She told Rick that she was sick of trying to seem like a decent housewife, and that she was weary of being around a dull guy like myself, who made her feel old. She also told Rick that she was bored of being with me. Had it not been for the fact that I am in such a secure financial position, she would have left me a long time ago. Everybody, including Rick, inquired about her intentions with regard to our children. Her exact words were, "He can have them." She didn't even want to be around our children anymore, since she believed that they loved me more, and because she was considering having her do-over baby in the near future anyhow. As a result of my extreme displeasure, I came dangerously close to throwing the laptop on the floor of my hotel room, but I managed to keep my composure. After getting some food at a restaurant and watching a movie, I drank a couple beers from a six-pack and then watched the movie. After that, I remained in bed for the better part of the night, simply laying there and ruminating about it until I eventually slept off. I had the impression that I knew Sarah quite well, but in the end, there are some people who are simply terrible, and you can never truly know who they are until they expose their actual selves. I loved her and would have given her all I had to offer her, but then I realized that some people are just evil. At that very moment, I made up my decision to get rid of her throughout the divorce process. Normally, I am a really gentle and peaceful guy. Nevertheless, if you make me upset enough, I can become your worst nightmare that you could ever imagine. The very following day, I went to a legal office that specializes in divorce attorneys and requested for the most aggressive attorney that they had available. My home state is an at-fault state, which means that Sarah was in a bad situation the instant I caught her having an affair on tape. Initially, the attorney was concerned by my desire to employ him so soon. However, when I provided him with a more in-depth explanation of the case and even showed him some of the video evidence, he had a change of heart. It was at that moment that he smiled in a mischievous manner and we shook hands. Due to the fact that this was the type of case that divorce attorneys like getting their teeth into, he said that he would begin immediately. I had Sarah served a few weeks later on a day when I was working from home and the children were attending school. Mason was in the first grade and Olivia was in preschool at the time. The local sheriff brought the documents directly to Sarah's hands, and the cameras were able to capture the whole event. The moment she opened the package, read what was inside, and then went completely insane, she seemed to be terrified. She came racing into my office to yell at me, but I managed to keep my composure and stay calm during the whole ordeal. My mental state had already been entirely checked out of our marriage a long time ago. Sarah wanted to raise a dispute. Earlier, I informed her that I had already made up my mind and that I wanted her to leave my home. The only person who has ever made a payment toward the mortgage is myself. She yelled at me that I couldn't do this to her, and then she threatened to tell others that I beat her if I brought her to court, which would also result in my being fired from my work. I told her that she could go ahead and make up whatever lie she wanted to tell, since it wouldn't be of any use to her. Considering that she is already carrying Rick's child, it is not as if she did not intend to take advantage of me in any manner throughout this pregnancy. When she asked me how much I knew, she looked at me with wide eyes. I basically informed her that I had enough information and that I wanted her to go. I claimed that I knew enough. In response, she refused and said that it was her home just as much as it was mine. She then went back to locking herself in the bedroom. I was able to see her having a breakdown on the bedroom cams, after which she pulled out her phone and dialed the number for the police. Despite the fact that she was behaving as if she was in a state of utter fear, she had a significant grin on her face while she was doing it. She has a lot of acting qualities. Had I not previously been aware of the fact that she was a liar, I would have accepted the performance that she gave over the phone in a heartbeat. I stood outside with the front door wide open, waiting for the cops to arrive, and I instructed them to report immediately upon their arrival. In the beginning, they were enraged and prepared for a confrontation. However, the home was spotless, and there were no indications that they had gotten into any kind of altercation. Sarah ran out of the bedroom and grabbed the vest of one of the cops while weeping and calling me a crazy. She did this as she was in the process of attacking me. I approached one of the other policemen and requested permission to provide them with proof of what was really taking on. He granted my request, which came as a complete surprise to Sarah, since she was not aware that I had taped her. I showed the officer the footage from the cameras on a laptop of Sarah saying that she would make things up to ruin my life, then the footage from the living room after she ran out of my office and into the master bedroom down the hall, and finally, the footage from the camera in the bedroom of her calling the police and lying to them. All of these videos were shown to the officer. In addition, I videotaped everything from a variety of perspectives. In spite of the fact that she went to the police and said that I had struck her, not only were there no bruises on her body, but the cameras that were placed all around the home indicated an entirely different tale. After that, I presented the authorities with a thumb drive and informed them that it included all of the video evidence they need of her phoning them under pretenses that were not true. Even in the face of all of this, Sarah continued to insist on her lie that I was an abuser. She even attempted to argue that the recordings were unlawful and, as a result, inadmissible. However, I pointed out that they are legal since they were security cameras inside of my own house and were not recorded in public. Sarah turned her gaze toward the law enforcement officers, requested that they take action. They complied with her request and placed her in handcuffs, at which point she began crying like a kid. It was all I could do to sit there and shake my head. When I was younger, she was the lady I loved for a very long time. My impression of her was that she was a great, clever, and charming person. My mistake could hardly have been more egregious. In the course of the police taking her away, she yelled that they could not treat her in such a manner, but she did not put up much of a struggle. Otherwise, she would have been charged with resisting arrest in addition to the other accusations. After that, I terminated all of her credit cards that were in my name and halted all further payments into the joint bank account. As a result, she was forced to spend only her own money to bail herself out of prison. While I was the only one responsible for paying the mortgage, she had accumulated a significant amount of savings over the course of those years that she continued to work. She returned back for her vehicle, which I had taken the pleasure of loading with a couple of her bags full of her clothing and some other stuff. While she was coming back for her car, I left the key on the seat, which prevented her from ever being able to enter the home again. Just one day after Sarah was released from prison on her own, her parents came to talk to me about the situation. At first, they were only able to rely on the erroneous account that she had provided to them, which was essentially the same thing that she had attempted to tell the authorities. Edward, her father, was particularly prepared to assault me since, despite his advanced age, he is a large and powerful man. Nevertheless, When I inquired as to whether he was aware of anything about Sarah S. affair or her pregnancy, he seemed to be extremely astonished and allowed me the opportunity to explain myself. I took out the laptop once again in order to demonstrate to my in-laws what I had filmed. Upon discovering the reality, they expressed their disdain and said that they were unable to accept the fact that this person was their daughter. They expressed their regret to me and assured me that they will get in contact with me in order to assist me with my children. After that, they confronted Sarah about her lying by calling her on the speaker and positioning her directly in front of me. It was until they said that they were with me at that precise moment, that they had seen the tapes, that they knew everything, and that they wanted her to leave their home immediately that she attempted to double down. My in-laws told me that they did not raise her to be a self-centered, unfaithful woman who would try to frame her own husband and that she was no longer their daughter. She attempted to backtrack, but they stated that they did not teach her to be such a person. They immediately disowned her over the phone, and then they hung up before Sarah could say anything further. This occurred before she said anything else. She made many attempts to contact them back, but they always disregarded her calls. When they arrived at their house, not only was she gone, but she had also broken a number of items around the house, which caused my mother-in-law to cry. Despite the fact that my ex-parents continue to see their grandkids on occasion, I still consider them to be my in-laws. However, Sarah is no longer with us, even though she is no longer physically here. After some time had passed, Sarah returned with Rick present in order to gather her belongings. Rick would not even enter inside the home, and Sarah would not utter a single word to me while she was collecting the last items in her possession. She was aware that there were cameras in every location, and she would be more than willing to doom herself if she attempted anything else. Not only was I not alone myself, but Julie and Tom were also there to assist me in keeping an eye on her throughout this time. Tom made it a point to keep a watchful eye on Rick as he was standing at the window. When the children arrived at their house, Sarah was still in the process of packing, and she did not make any effort to communicate with either of them, not even when Olivia screamed out for Mom. Just before she left, she removed a couple of the photographs that we had taken of each other during our wedding off the wall and hurled them to the ground in an attempt to destroy them. When of the way she stared at me while she was doing it, I believe she was anticipating a response from me. However, when I did not respond to her, she just collected the remainder of her luggage and went out the door. As soon as she left, I had to make a phone call to my elderly mother in order to have her come and stay with me for a bit since I was unable to take care of my children by myself. Not only was I unable to take a significant amount of time off from work, but I also did not have a lot of alternatives for childcare. In addition, I requested DNA testing for my children. I was certain that they belonged to me, but a few others have informed me that I should be aware of this just in case. I am fortunate enough to say that both of my children are mine. I did get tested for sexually transmitted infections, and the results showed that I do not have any, so there is no need to be concerned about that. Approximately 1 week later, Sarah returned to my doorstep and informed me that she would consent to a clean divorce if I also consented to it. This meant that she would have received 50% of everything if I had agreed to the divorce. On the other hand, I told her that I would not accept it. During the course of the conflict, she more or less acknowledged to discovering that the law in this state was not on her side. There was considerable back and forth between the two parties. This is the state where we first met, where we were engaged, where we got married, and where we have spent our whole lives. There was no way for her to avoid suffering a significant loss unless I agreed to settle, which I did not do. There was no way of avoiding it. I went on to say that she had an affair, which was a betrayal of me, our children, her parents, and pretty much everyone else in the world. I then slammed the door in her face and walked out. I didn't see her again until the courtroom, and she departed in a stealthy manner. During the time when she was in divorce court, Sarah was plainly pretty pregnant, and she had employed the services of an attorney. There was also no sign of Rick wherever to be seen. I anticipated that she would lie before the court, and she in fact began to do so on a few occasions. However, I had sufficient video evidence to disprove any falsehoods that she could have said, so she truly did not have a chance. Her strategy consisted of simply refusing to cooperate and making a variety of demands in an effort to delay the divorce proceedings. Initially, she was interested in the majority of my funds. A lengthy list of other items that I owned was something that she desired, and she also wanted me to buy her out of her share of the home, despite the fact that she had never paid into it. I, on the other hand, was demanding that she be removed from the home deed and that she be granted full custody of the children. I was able to provide video evidence to support her claims that she no longer really cared for our children, and that she would fabricate falsehoods in order to justify her actions on the matter. Sarah attempted to delay the proceedings and make several adjustments to her requests, but the court would not let her to continue to drag things out. Because this was an at-fault state, she was entitled to very little, considering that she was the one who committed the adulterous act, and the fact that she attempted to frame me just made her situation much more difficult. At the end of the day, she was awarded exclusive custody of our children and was able to walk away with little more than her personal things, a cash settlement that might be deemed reasonable, taking into account the circumstances, and the automobile that I had previously purchased for her. At the time of the settlement, the title was in my name yet. I signed it over without any concern for the consequences. Because she had not even attempted to communicate with our children during the whole of the divorce process, I was awarded full custody of them. Since I now own the home in its entirety, I am no longer in any way dependent on her. Julie spread the news about Sarah's adultery, and shortly after, all of our common acquaintances cut her off when they discovered who was speaking the truth. My now ex-wife attempted to keep up with her falsehoods about me to other people before and throughout the divorce, but Julie spread the word about Sarah's infidelity. Following the conclusion of the divorce proceedings, Sarah and Rick left town together. According to what I have heard, Rick was not terminated but rather transferred. I have no idea where it is. On the other hand, I am aware that my former partner was required to accompany him. If it were up to me, they could have sent him and Sarah to Greenland, where they could have frozen. I'm just relieved that they have both departed. By now, my ex-wife ought to have given birth to her do-over kid, and I hope that she found the experience to be worthwhile. After I had just finished discussing about my wife releasing a rabbit in a location where it may be taken by a hawk, I did not anticipate that I would be posting this on Reddit. However, a number of the remarks that I had received in the past on the manner in which my wife was behaving made me realize that I ought to have been paying attention to the warning signs a long time ago. For the whole of our marriage, I must have been wearing rose-colored glasses, but now that it is ended, I can see things clearly. Any readers who made it through this are deserving of my gratitude. Despite the fact that it was a lot to read, this is how my life is. Edit, I was able to remove Sarah's name off the home deed, since all of the bank documents that could be uncovered indicated that I was the only one who had paid into it. In addition, Sarah engaged in a number of arguments with the court, and in a state where she is seen to be at fault, the fact that she is a proven cheater puts her in a very difficult position throughout the divorce process. The situation is analogous to having a prenuptial agreement that has been signed against you. I was serious when I mentioned that the legal office I went to had the most resentful attorney, and I meant it. The individual resembled both a bear and a shark. $85,000 was the amount of the settlement that Sarah received, and she also received the automobile that I had purchased brand new for her 6 years earlier at a cost of $65,000. After I had finished paying off the automobile, I gave her the title to the vehicle. Sarah was also still given partial custody of our children. However, due to the fact that the video of her stating that she no longer cared about them had been shown, she did not bother to seek any custody, and instead voluntarily abandoned all rights to our children when she realized that she could not achieve what she wanted. And for those who would believe that the police would not have arrested Sarah for lying, you should reconsider your assumptions. The local law enforcement officers are not to be trifled with, and Sarah, with a psychotic smirk on her face, attempted to paint me as a person who beats her wife. There is a sufficient amount of grounds for arrest.